Untitled Chapter. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. So welcome to the Dublin Sunday program. Today we were hoping to bring it from the temple, but unfortunately there's been another kind of closure of sorts in the fact that we cannot have any ceremonies in the temple at all. Previously we were able to have up to 15 people, but now it's kind of, for the next 3 weeks we're not going to be able to do it, so not to worry. So we'll bring it to you anyway, and I have my Bhagavad Gita here, which I'm going to speak from today, and I have some of my notes as well here behind me. Thank you for attending. So I wanted to speak today on the chapter from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, which is Karma Yoga. Johnny, couldn't maybe go outside and just close it? Great, thanks. And it's a specific point. It's quite interesting because Arjuna is starting to. He's just heard from Krishna. He obviously we know what happened with Arjuna. He threw down his bow and arrows and said, "I shall not fight," because he was just overwhelmed by the whole occasion. It was on a battlefield, and he was about to take up arms. But then he saw all his cousins, friends, brothers, uncles, granduncles, grandfathers, different people in front of him, and he was very bewildered about what to do. So he said to Krishna, "Now I'm your." I should really learn the Sanskrit of it, but he says Shishya. He said to Krishna, "Please tell me what to do. I don't know how to act. I'm completely unable to do anything." So that was Arjuna's position. So then Krishna starts to give him the philosophy. Basically, that's the first thing Krishna does. He starts to tell him that never was Natayaham Jatuna Shamna Family Major Janadipa Nachevahana Vishanaha Sarve Vayamatakbraham. Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us ever cease to be. So he's starting to tell Arjuna that he's an eternal servant of Krishna. And then he knows Sminyata Dehi Komaram Yoganam Jaran Tatade Hantrada Paptir Diras Tatranamurti. So it basically says as the soul passes in this life from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death, and the self-realized soul, a self-realized person, is not bewildered by such a change. And then Matra Sparshas Tukanteya Satoshna Sukada Agama Paino Nityasthans Tikshala Bharata. Means that happiness and distress, winter and summer seasons, and we should become not disturbed by all these various things that are happening around us. So Krishna takes it, then he gets into the whole philosophy of the soul, and soul is tiny by nature, it's subatomic, it's actually spiritual by nature. So that's quite a thing to say, actually. So he's trying to give Arjuna a picture of what's actually going on, and he explains to him that he can't actually kill or cause anybody to kill, because and then he kind of drops in the really important point, which is that all these different people on the battlefield are already killed by my will. So Krishna's in control. And then later on, the 11th chapter and so on, he shows him a universal form, and in the universal form, Arjuna can see all the different living entities going into Krishna's fearsome form, his mouths and his gigantic universal form, and all the bodies are rushing in, and it's an absolute incredible sight to behold. I probably wouldn't wish it on anybody, although Arjuna did seem to want to see it, and he did see it, but he wanted to see it for himself, but he wanted to show that God is not some cheap personality, that you can just, oh yeah, I'm God, you're God, everyone is God. God has some incredible powers, unbelievable powers. So this is called the science of self-realization. So what I wanted to do today was to speak from the chapter 3, Karma Yoga. As I said, Krishna has already explained to Arjuna about the nature of the soul, and then he explains about various other aspects of nature. And actually, in fact, the second chapter is considered to be a summary of the whole Bhagavad Gita. So a very important chapter. But at the end of it, I think Arjuna comes back and starts to ask a question, and it's a very interesting question he asks. Arjuna Vacha Jayasi Chit Karmanaste Mata Buddhir Janardana Tatkin Karmani Gorhe Mam Nirjoya Yasikeshava. Arjuna said, "O Arjuna, O Keshava, why do you want to engage me in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruit of work?" So I want you to picture the situation. Arjuna's just about to go onto the battlefield to perform his duty. He's a sword in hand. He has his chariot ready. There's 7 Oksohinis of an army that he's assembled. An Oksohini, let me just get my mathematics right. 18 into 6. There was 640 million people died in this battle. So there's 7 Oks. At least he had a couple of 100 million people ready for to fight. And then he says, "I think I'll not fight now." So we can understand what his duty was in that situation. His duty was to fight, and so we often find ourselves in that situation, in that we often think, why have I got to do this? Why do I have to work? Why is this duty? Why all these things I have to do? But actually, that's the question that Arjuna was asking. And he had a particular solution to it. So now we'll see what the solution is, what Krishna says. Arjunardana, O Keshava, why do you want to engage me in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruit of work? Purport. This is by Divine Guru Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead Sri Krishna has very elaborately described the constitution of the soul in the previous chapter, with a view to delivering his intimate friend Arjuna from the ocean of material grief. And the path of realization has been recommended, Buddha Yoga, or Krishna consciousness. Sometimes Krishna consciousness is misunderstood to be inertia, and one with such a misunderstanding often withdraws to a secluded place to become fully Krishna conscious by chanting the holy name of Lord Krishna. But without being trained in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, it is not advisable to chant the holy name of Krishna in a secluded place, where one may acquire only cheap adoration from the innocent public. Arjuna also thought of Krishna consciousness, or Buddha Yoga, or intelligence in spiritual advancement of knowledge, as something like retirement from active life and the practice of penance and austerity at a secluded place. In other words, he wanted to skillfully avoid the fighting by using Krishna consciousness as an excuse. But as a sincere student, he placed the matter before his master and questioned Krishna as to the best course of action. In answer, Lord Krishna elaborately explained Karma Yoga, our work in Krishna consciousness, in this third chapter. Amikinati Vilandasya Janadana Shalakaya Chakshunalitanena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. I took to Krishna consciousness nearly 4 decades ago. I was studying to be a teacher, and I was about to embark on a career, and Krishna consciousness came along, and instead I joined the temple. Hare Krishna. And I'm not sure what I was absolutely looking for at that time, but one of the things which most impressed me about Krishna consciousness when I joined the temple was that there was lots of activity, and that was very pleasing to me. It was interesting, it was adventurous, and it was exciting. And it is interesting, adventurous, and exciting, even 4 decades on. There is so much scope to act in Krishna consciousness. I'll preface that by saying that I did study some of the some of the Buddhist texts which advocated actually sitting. One was called Zazen, in which you're trying to sit in a posture and somehow or other absolutely still everything. I would be sitting trying to get the right posture for something in the region of half an hour, 3/4 of an hour. I was studying myself. I didn't have an actual teacher as such, but besides the book that I was learning from. But it was very unfulfilling. I got some little insight, some little peace of mind, but I just didn't feel fulfilled. When I then started to study Zen Buddhism a bit more, I was a little happier, because I could see that there was activities in Zen Buddhism. It wasn't just reclusive. I know there's some of the orders in the Christian faith. My mother used to go to this group of nuns in Alphonsus Road in Drumcondra, and they would never leave their monastery. They just stay, and they didn't have any internet. I think they wrote letters, so probably that's what they did, if they did that. I'm not even sure they were allowed to do that. But they did take visitations. So my dear mother used to go there once a month or so and ask them how to deal with her, what would you call it, her not very easily controllable sons, me being one of them. So the life was quite difficult for her, so she would have to bring up us sons and daughter in a Kali Yuga environment, and it wasn't easy. It's not easy now, bringing up children is not an easy thing. Can be enjoyable, there's so many amazing things, but you have to be very protective as well to protect your kids to a certain degree from all the influences that are there, the negative influences, should I say. But anyway, she used to go there, but the nuns used to pray. That's what they did. That was their idea. They prayed for the general good in society. That's also good. It was also a good activity. But I remember being very disturbed one time when I was much younger again, when one girl from our parish, local district, she was 12, 13, and she went off to be a nun. She was quite a good-looking girl and quite a pleasant girl. So I used to know her quite well. So I was often very disappointed. Why would she do that? Why would she waste her? Why would she waste her life? A little afterwards, her brother did something similar, and they're very nice family, very nice people. And again, I was probably less worried about him for some reason. But anyway, so that happened, and I did feel kind of a little bit like, why? But then I've actually in Krishna consciousness for the last, as I say, while. Yesterday we were performing the Sankirtan Yoga, which is on the street, which is a prayer, and it is a very joyful prayer, and we're performing it in front of everybody, and we want people to join in, even if people are misguided or if they are, as happens a lot in Dublin streets these days, intoxicated. Even if they join in, most of the devotees are always quite happy to amuse them, and they're happy that they are doing something. We don't know the depth of the power of the mantra. It can penetrate absolutely eons of contamination, of covering of the soul. It can break all the way through. It can completely obliterate it. There are so many verses in Bhagavatam which explain that. I actually would need to consult my Bhagavatam, which I don't have at the moment. But there is many verses which explain that. And so the devotees are very happy. They're having an effect on society. But what are they doing? They're actually inviting Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda into the whole atmosphere of the world, basically. And this is not some dry renunciation, or it's not some hocus pocus, or it's not some prayer into the void. No, it is an actual calling to God to come among us so as to lighten our burden and for us to partake in the joyous activities of union and association with God. So it is it's a very deep thing which we're doing. It may seem like a mundane street at a mundane hour, but no, that the devotees are very solidly calling on Krishna to be there. And we're not necessarily, we're doing it for other people, but we're not doing it for other people. Prabhupada was very strong about that point. He said that we should do it to please God, to please Krishna. And Krishna is only too happy to become participant. We see our Panchatattva, their arms are upraised and they're like this, they're praying for us to come to him. That's Krishna's prayer. So that's why we're doing it. We're calling on Krishna, because Krishna then is in everybody's heart. So all the people that are passing, Krishna's in their heart. And some people going by, they dance along to the rhythm, they partake, they participate, and it is very so it basically we're setting up the situation for Krishna to be there. So the degree of the purity of our hearts, to that degree Krishna will appear. And the fact that we're chanting together is it's a more powerful, it's called the congregational chanting of the holy names. Krishna Dwara Krishna Krishna Sangopanga Shraparshada Yagye Sankirtana Yajanti Hi Sumedashaha. It's the particular yogya for this age, and it is Raja Vijay Raja Gurun Pavitam Idam Uttamam Chaksalvagamam Dharmam Sashukam Makartam Avyam. It is joyfully performed. There is joy, and that's, I think, what a lot of people see when we're chanting. They see the devotees are actually joyful. They like to do it. They want to do it. They really want to be there to chant, and so that's, I think, what comes across. And but that's not necessarily why we're doing it. We're that's a kind of like a byproduct of what we're doing. So in this verse, Prabhu is, he makes this point that we're not just doing it, we're not chanting Hare Krishna so that we can go off and actually just become immersed in our chanting alone. No, Prabhu says there's a whole philosophy behind it. And that whole philosophy is to do with Krishna consciousness, is that Arjuna he's a warrior in a battlefield, he's his duties to perform. He can't just renege on them. You can't just say, nah, sorry, not doing anything, had enough, I'm just going off here into the corner and I'm going to chant and everything will be fine. Because Krishna very clearly says to him that that's not the case. That he won't be fine. It won't be all joyful for him if he does that. In fact, he calls it, he even talks about it as like a cheating process. And Prabhupada also refers to a spiritual master who referred to it as a cheating process, because like today, like anybody who would do something like that, we would consider, well, that's amazing, they're all chanting. But you can do it with it. It depends on the mentality that you do it in, of course. But if it's a way of trying to escape our duty, or we won't become purified. That's what Prabhupada is saying. If we have all these different desires there, and we need to perform action or activity in Krishna consciousness, and we're not sufficiently advanced to go into a place and chant and just chant, then Prabhupada says there's a whole world of activities that we must perform. And it's not to say that when we're very advanced that we cannot do that. Yes, of course we can. But if we're not advanced, then our mind will just dwell on so many other things. So the chanting is very important, and it's broad. This is what Arjuna is asking this question of Krishna. And so Krishna is implying then that we need to perform our activities, whatever those activities are. We have so much conditioning because of our previous activity. Before we came to this world, of course, the fact that we have a material body means that we were trying to lord it over material nature. And so this body is only given to people who have misunderstood their own self. We have misunderstood who we are. And this place, this material world, is set up specifically, completely expertly set up for us to try to live out those fantasies. That we are in control of this world, that it's made for our enjoyment, and everything is centered around me. The material world is full of that. Unfortunate problem is that everybody thinks like that. So when you have everybody thinking the world is centered around them, then they're going to have a lot of friction. And so yada yada hidama shagdani bhavita bharata bhutanama dharma shantanam shajanyam Krishna sometimes comes to try to rectify that situation, because not everybody is the center, but Krishna comes himself to explain who is the center, that he is the center, that he has set this whole world up for that purpose. And then the souls can actually somehow turn to Krishna, turn away from themselves and their self-absorption, then turn to Krishna. So that is why we perform these activities, because we have to get into the stage of understanding that our constitutional position is to please Krishna, or to serve Krishna, or to love Krishna, to love God. So that's it's a tall order, basically, because we're not wired that way, or our false ego is not wired that way. It's a lamentable situation, actually, because even as many times as we're told it, and I will have to say that over the past 4 decades, I've heard it every day, but still, my natural tendency is to think of myself, to become self-absorbed, worry about myself. All the thoughts that are coming into my mind are to do with my self-preservation or enjoyment, or not at all, but I mean, I think you get my meaning though. It's something which is why I'm working on Krishna consciousness, to alleviate. As I explained before, I have tried several other systems of spirituality to achieve this, but I find that this system is clearly very honest. We have to be we have to have great integrity to practice it properly. There's no point in not practicing it properly, because I'm only fooling myself, and so it's a constant adventure. It's a glorious struggle. I often see it as it's the only struggle that's worth struggling for. I mean, you can struggle for a big car and big business. You can struggle for that, but it's very clear that there isn't any real constant or permanent enjoyment for that. But the struggle is there for permanent enjoyment. That is what the reality is. We're looking for permanency here, but it is not available here. And as the decades move on, you realize your time is getting shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. So you've less time to lose. So the reason I take up spiritual life and self-realization is that it means I'm constantly working on the right thing. Little drops of water wear away my stone heart, and my heart becomes softened and purified, and to allow God in. Otherwise my heart becomes hardened and only allows myself in, and whatever I can grab. But so I'm trying not to grab too much, but it's a day by day thing. Every day is an opportunity to lessen the grip that I have, or that my ego has, on my existence, or on myself, on my real self. So my ego has through the vehicle of the mind, has a very strong vice-like grip on the self. As soon as you try to make some advancement, it kind of goes after you, tries to hold on to you, because the self is struggling for self-realization, but the mind's vice-like grip is holding the self in lock. It's in a locked position. We can give examples of apparently some of these Rottweilers, what are they called? I forget the name, Staffordshire Terriers or whatever. They have this lock grip. Once they bite down, there's a device which goes and they won't let go. And you can't actually break it up, practically speaking. So that's the way that we are. That's how trapped we are. If you don't believe it, just go to any of the wards in the hospital. You could call them COVID wards now, and see the struggle for existence that's going on there. You know, that's no joke. There, you know, so much distress which goes on. You go to a war zone. I talked recently to a war reporter, Orla Kieran is her name, and I talked to her about politics a little bit, but I wanted to ask her about. She was constantly reporting for the BBC in these war-torn countries. You know, what was it like? She's actually seemed quite a calm person, which is quite interesting. But and a lot of reporters want to show what it's like sometimes, you know. And I've seen some documentaries of what actual war is actually like. Most people from the First and Second World War, they never spoke about their experiences for many, many years afterwards. So that can just tell you the post-traumatic stress disorder, you know, but also flashbacks, but also the horrors that people had to go through. So this vice-like grip is very, very strong. Don't underestimate it. It's very. But somehow or other, through Krishna consciousness and through practicing every day, by practicing, I'll say it. I always say it in these classes, by reading Bhagavad Gita every day, and by chanting Hare Krishna every day, as much as possible. We can then approach the day, just like Arjuna did, and be able to exist with our mind still focused on Krishna, armed with yoga, stand and fight. When Arjuna was in the battlefield, it wasn't that he was thinking of Krishna all the time, but he had to get on with his activities. So in a similar way, devotees should be in that do thou fight for the sake of fighting without considering loss or gain, victory or defeat. That's Krishna's advice in the Bhagavad Gita. I think it's in 238. I'll just have a quick look and see if it's there. Some of these verses are Sukha dukkha same kritva labha labho lajaya jaya tato yudhaya yajasva naivam papam avapsisi. Do thou fight for the sake of fighting without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat, and by so doing you shall never incur sin. So Krishna is giving us this advice that we should perform our activities, and we should try to perform it joyously, you know, but we should offer it as an offering unto God. That's the way it should be done. We should and we can't do that maybe on a minute by minute basis. And as I said, the mind and the false ego will be trying to get in there and influence. But don't heed that. Get up early in the morning, the earlier the better, and chant and read, and give yourself a chance throughout the day to stay in Krishna consciousness. We all know that life is about balance, you know. So many things that you have to balance. Like for instance, you have your priorities. You have your family priority, your wife, your children. You have your work priority. Your boss wants you to do this, or you're your own boss, you have to do this, you have to do that. Then you have the spiritual priorities. You have to do, as I was mentioning, getting up early and chanting, and hearing, and associating with devotees, learning how to be Krishna conscious, avoiding the 10 offenses. Then there is, you know, as a citizen of the state, you have to pay your taxes or whatever. There's all these priorities that are there that you're constantly. Your health. Your health is your wealth. Such an important priority, especially as you get older. But if you're younger, treat it as your priority as well, because when you get older, you'll feel better, and you'll be able to last longer. And perhaps that extra time that you save, if you live healthily, then you can spend it in practicing spiritual life, and you can get out of here in one lifetime and not have to come back. So that's a very important thing as well, the health. So these are different things like in Bhagavad Gita, it's also explained. I don't have the Sanskrit of this one, but it says that he was regulated in his habits of eating, sleeping, and recreation and work. So Krishna's advocating this. You know, he's saying that this is necessary for us to be in this position, to do things in this way. And so these are different factors which are there. So, but what I'm trying to make the point here is that we should take on our dharma with a good heart, and perform it with a good mind and a good heart, and to do it as much as possible as a sacrifice unto Vishnu. Now, if we're very, very advanced, obviously, we can take up Krishna consciousness full time and just become a full-time preacher in the Krishna consciousness movement. This is so ideal. Prabhupada glorified all his devotees. I'm sorry, I've Murti Prabhupada here. I have Prabhupada here. And he wanted this. He wanted devotees to do this so they could get this taste, this very powerful taste, which a lot of people have experienced from joining a monastery. I heard a really nice conversation between two monks, former monks, Ravi Prabhu and Ganesham Jay Shetty, and they were both explaining how their experience as monks so much helped them in their career subsequently, and how it gave them a great insight into, and they were discussing this, and this is like, I don't know how many followers each of them. I know Jay is probably in the billion at this stage. This message gets across. This message gets across that people then realize that they have to spend some time really studying, and that can help their whole work process. And and that's what gets me onto this next part of what we're speaking here. Like I explained how Krishna explained in the second chapter about Arjuna has to get up and fight and do his duty, and then but he does it through Buddhi yoga, and Arjuna then thinks, do I have to then go off into the forest? And Krishna then is going to say, no, you don't have to do that. Sri Bhagavatam Vacha. I've already explained that there are two classes of men who try to realize the self. Some are inclined to understand by empirical philosophical speculation, and others by devotional service. And then Krishna then says, he goes on to explain that you have to perform your duty basically. But then, this is where the Bhagavatam comes in, this is where training comes in. And because we're finding more and more that the congregation on the Krishna consciousness don't live in the temple, so how do they get this great burst of energy that's needed, that's very important to see the importance of Krishna consciousness? And this is through one of our great friends, Akandali Prabhu. He sees it as it's through going on courses, taking weekends off, going to temples, and spending time doing spending time and getting immersed, getting a taste. We find so many of our senior devotees going online and giving very expert guidance in various ways. So this is something which we try to do, but nevertheless, we have a great resource in Srila Prabhupada's books. We had a great week there about explaining the importance of Srila Prabhupada's books. But through Srila Prabhupada's books, we're constantly reminded of who we are and what our duty is. And at the moment, I'm on the 6th canto of the Bhagavatam, and everybody knows the 6th canto has to do with Ajamil. And Ajamil is dependence on the holy name. And in this, I came upon some great texts and verses, and Srila Prabhupada describing on what our goal of life is, because this is the most important thing. We talk about goal setting, and what should I want to have a house, I want to have a TV, I want to have this, I want to have that. No, but the real goal setting, this goes on. This is the balance I was talking about earlier. What does Krishna say our most important activity is? And Krishna says, one's main concern should be to increase one's attachment, this is Prabhupada speaking, to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and to increase one's love for Him. So that is the goal, That is the most important thing. We have our family, we have our work, we have all of these other things, but this verse which says, Shrama Eva Hi Kevalam. It is only so much a waste of time. We've had millions of families. We've had dog families, cat families, toad families, so many different families. Of course, Krishna conscious families are different, but we have to increase our love for Krishna. Then automatically we can love all our other families, all our other brothers and sisters and so on. But we must have love for Krishna. Our main concern should be to increase our attachment to the Supreme Personality. So we have to become attached in the first place. So we have to become attached to hearing and chanting. Burijan Prabhu, Ravindra Swarup Prabhu gave some amazing talks about becoming attached to the holy name of Krishna. Satyanandan Swami has given his life, basically, to try to get people to become attached to the holy name of Krishna, to hear with attention, and to hear with attention, that Krishna is there. That is such an important thing, because when we give attention to Krishna, to God, then God is present. Krishna is non-different from his holy name. It is the same thing. The deity in the temple, Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan, his holy name, they're the same thing. So when we're on the street performing Sankirtan Yoga in the right way to please Krishna, Krishna is there. Krishna is there on the street. And people wonder, what's the best thing we can do for the planet? Just bring Krishna. Bring Krishna. He can sort everything out. He's the most powerful. Nobody's as powerful as Krishna. He set the whole thing out. He can enter in or he can stay out. He can observe, he can witness, he can sanction. He can do all of these things. But the most important thing is to bring Krishna, is have Krishna present. To have Krishna present. So Krishna is present when we're attentive to Krishna. That's it. Forget about all the worries in the world. So many times we have the solution to all solutions when we try to chant Hare Krishna. The solution, this is it. And the mind, okay, let's fix this, fix that. It's absurd, but that's the position. That's how the mind tries to distract us. But Krishna says that we should increase our attachment to the Supreme Personality Godhead and increase one's love for him. So what is that love? That's the dormant love in our heart for Krishna. That's who we are. That's self-realization. Don't worry about all the other ego, whatever, the ego personalities, the anger, lust, greed, the selfish, envy. That's not us. That's called a false ego. That's not us. The love in our heart for Krishna is who we are. Why? Because Krishna set it up that way. Krishna wants our love. That's why he expanded. Very nice class this morning. Ravindra Prabhu was explaining about Krishna being our. He's there. I know this is not exactly the way it is. Krishna was on his own, but to enjoy more, he expanded himself. But that's like our kind of understanding of that. But we're Krishna's expansions, and for us to really be in the love, we have to understand our relationship with Krishna, because that's who we are. That's our genuine position. So it really is an important thing for us to do. So that therefore our main goal, Krishna's our main goal, is to increase one's attachment to Krishna and to increase one's love for him. And Krishna then says, the supreme religious system for human society is that by which one can awaken his dormant love for me, Krishna says. So our love is there for Krishna. Don't even doubt it. It's there. Just listen to Prabhupada, listen to Krishna. That's the way it is. Our dormant love is there. That's who we are. That's who we need to become. And don't even worry that we're not up to the mark. Don't even go there. Don't dwell in the mess. Don't get discouraged, disheartened, or absorbed, because that's part of it. The mess absorbs you. You get absorbed in this went wrong and that went wrong and I did this and he said this and she did this and I'm going to do this and she's going to do that. Just try to forget all of that, especially when you're, okay, so in the real world, in the world we do have to function. We have to make decisions, we have to make choices, we have to, it depends on who we are and what position we take in the world, we have to act. And that's what Krishna is saying. But don't forget, like, we have to awaken our dormant love for Krishna. And this is another really important point as well. So you see what I'm coming to here? There's the two things. There's the philosophy of our, and there's the reality of our loving Krishna, and then there's our position in the world and us having to act. But we can only act in the world if we have real understanding of who we are. And if we understand who we are, we understand who we are in relation to Radha and Krishna. We have, let me see if the time, yes, okay. And this is a verse 6:3:22. Etavan eva lokasmin. That's in the 6th chapter. But after chanting the holy name of the Lord and dancing in ecstasy, one gradually sees the form of the Lord, the pastimes of the Lord, and the transcendental qualities of the Lord. So the whole process of Krishna consciousness is meant for this. I mean, I was really enjoyed, I didn't get all of it, but Prabhu's class on Thursday, because he was explaining, he was describing Krishna's pastimes, ultimately. He was quoting verses about the gopis and how they're constantly thinking of Krishna, and their heart beating, is always beating to Krishna. Their heart is so attached to Krishna, they're always thinking of Krishna, basically. And some beautiful verses like that. So they're always thinking of Krishna. So why am I always thinking of Krishna? Which is what is preventing me from doing this. But if we chant and dance in ecstasy, then we will experience this. We will experience Krishna's presence. This is the point. We will get to understand who Krishna is. This is what Krishna is telling us. This is the whole process is telling us. This is why Panchatattva are there. And this is why Krishna appeared. Krishna Dharma Chasana Krishna Sangokanga Shaparshitam Yagya Sankirtana Prayer Yajanti Hi Sumedasha. He appeared for this reason, this very reason. Just for this joyful dancing, become aware of Krishna. Krishna and all Krishna's devotees. Krishna's, the whole parampara. We don't understand how powerful these great saints and sages are. Some devotee was explaining to me about our different sages and saints. We have Gaur Kishore Das Babaji and Jagannath Das Babaji, and they were, in our line, they were just complete renunciants, and they were just constantly chant Hare Krishna. People would go and try to get their darshan, but they were very, very selective about who they would give the darshan to. But yet, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Prabhupada, they were constantly going out of their way to try to give this Krishna consciousness to others. We see that Lord Chaitanya, Haridas Thakur, Lord Nityananda, they were constantly going everywhere just to try to bring the souls back to him. So we can enter into that mood by chanting congregationally. We can enter into that mood, and then Krishna's presence becomes there, and then the whole parampara becomes present. This is the goal of the Krishna consciousness movement, is to become aware of this great movement, to become aware of how great this whole movement is, and to become participatory in it. It may be that there is not such a gross manifestation of it in this world, in different parts of this world. It may be that this gross manifestation we're never going to see it. But that's not the point. The point is that we associate with the parampara who want this, and we have to want it as well. And we have to try to serve them as best we can. And if there is a manifestation of it, so be it, by Krishna's will. Srila Prabhupada was very determined. He's our great Acharya. If by his mercy this happens, or by the mercy of his wonderful devotees, they will see. This will happen. They will see. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he forecast this great temple in Mayapur 100 years before. There was only shacks, trees, jungles, but he saw this big temple emerging. So it's a matter of time. We understand that, you know, and we have to be patient, enthusiastic, patient, and determined. So the patient is there as well. So this is our goal, though, to become part of the parampara, to become part of the congregational chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, and by doing that, it's a joyful process. Raja Vijay Raja Gurun Pavitramidamutavam Pratyaksha-vagamam dharmam Shushukam Kartamaviyam. It's joyfully performed. It's the most secret of all secrets. It gives direct perception of the self by realization, and is the perfection of a religion. It is everlasting performed. So somehow or other get in touch with the Sankirtan movement by making prasadam, giving out prasadam, by doing daily worship, inviting people, by speaking to people, by becoming a conduit of the whole parampara. There are so many ways we can do this. So therefore, as members of the Krishna consciousness movement, we should perform our daily activities, but we should also try to give Krishna consciousness to others as well. So that's another part of the balance that we have to get in there. We have our own duties to family, duties to work, duties to our health, duties to sadhana. Our main duty is to increase our attachment to the Supreme Personality of God, and increase our love for Him. But then we should also give Krishna consciousness to others. That is a great policy. Okay, so coming towards the time there, 4:30, and we haven't really worked out a wonderful system to take questions and so on, but it is something which we're missing. I have to say we're missing, because when the questions come, then the nectar starts to churn then as well, and often that question has, brings with it so much realization as well. So maybe after 3 weeks, I don't know, it will change.
Irina's asking, Haribo Prabhu, thank you again for your wonderful class. Any chance you can say a few words on the Purushottama month?
Okay, to say a few words on the Purushottama month. Thanks for bringing that up. You've given me some impetus now, is that we know that in the Purushottama month it becomes very, very auspicious for devotees to perform extra devotional service. We're always looking. It's because the Vedic scripture is done by the lunar month, or by the lunar cycle. So therefore, in every 3 years, there's an extra Purushottama month put in, and this month kind of balances the whole lunar calendar, and so it's considered to be extremely auspicious. I read about it that it's seemingly inauspicious, but devotees utilize it to the best ability by performing even more yajna. It's like during when Lord Chaitanya was born, everyone was chanting, because it was a lunar eclipse, but that's supposed to be inauspicious, because everybody was chanting. It became very auspicious. So in that sense, so many devotees are performing extra yoga at this time, and there is a great link between all the devotees. So if we start to get involved in that, we also can become part of a greater movement. It's like, give you a mundane example. When you're cycling a bike, it's fine, but it used to be on these open-decker buses, there used to be a bar on them. Probably people are too young to remember that, but there used to be a bar at the back of the bus, and I used to remember people used to grab that bar and be brought along by the bus, So in the same way, by performing activities in this Purushottam month, all the devotees are performing activities, extra activities. So you also become part of this whole activity, and so many more realizations can flow as well because of that. So inexplicable devotional prema can occur at this time. In other words, even unmerited. You can get up in the morning and feeling more refreshed. That's because the whole cycle, the whole society of devotees are actually literally transforming the material atmosphere into spiritual atmosphere. And because Krishna is in everyone's heart, okay, and he's in every atom. So the more if we're aware of Krishna, then we can be aware of everything. So in the same way, we can become part of the bigger picture by performing more devotional activities in this month and doing more hearing, serving the devotees, doing more service to devotees. It all adds up. So it's an incredible opportunity. So I hope that helps us. It's really, we just need to encourage each other to do more, really. So just when I say do more, I would say one other thing though. Do more maybe to become more focused, more balanced. Doing more could be doing less as well. If our mood can be passionate, then we can spend more time reading, so to maybe to bring down the passion and to allow us to focus, to see, and this ties into this very well. Those who are on this path are resolute in purpose, and their aim is one. O beloved child of the Kurus, those who are irresolute is many branch. So the same way Purushottam month, our aim is one. So our vision can be similar in that way. So we can tap in to a greater power, greater than us. So it may be that we spend more time hearing, more time reflecting on where we're at, what our situation is, so that we can again perform our activities in a more balanced way and probably in a more effective way. So our time is going to be spent between now and our last breath. So best that it's done in the most effective way, and that is done by being in the most balanced as well. And we have our priorities in situ. Okay. Hare Krishna. Is there any other comment? Okay, thank you very much for listening, and we'll be back again next week. And unfortunately, not back in the temple, but we'll be aspiring towards it. Okay. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki